Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am super excited today. I know it's been a long time since I have been on live, and I am just so happy to connect with you all. I have the amazing Kevin Carton here today that we are going to talk about soul's purpose and dream building and transforming our lives. And I can't wait to talk to him about the journey that he took of going one direction and then another, because I know myself, as well as a lot of people that I am connected with have had that sort of same journey also. And apologizing up front, my allergies here in Phoenix, the Palo Verdes are blooming, which I love, but they wreak havoc on anyone who has allergies. So my voice is a little bit different. So if you happen to be just listening to this and you go, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right, it's still me, I promise. It's just allergies. So with no further ado, I am going to hand it over to Kevin and ask him to introduce himself and tell us how he got to where he is.
Well, thanks, Alicia. I'm thrilled to be here with you. And yes, my name is Kevin Carton. That was a great intro. Um, and how I got to where I am, that's the question, huh?
Well,
Man,
the little bit now. We'll get into it deep.
yes. Yeah, short story. We can
Yeah.
unpack the longer story later. But as you probably already read, though, in my bio, Alicia, so you know this, but for those listening, I started my journey to being where I am today, running my own business as a transformational life coach, and being a podcast host myself with my brother. Uh, it was a long journey starting back in 2014 when I was 4 years into a doctorate program for pharmacy. And it was a traditional career path that I chose from high school because I loved science and math. It seemed like a great career to get into because it was prestigious, getting a doctorate, as well as then the salary, the average salary at that point was about $100,000 for a pharmacist, which I think it's probably higher even now. But all of it seemed like it lined up. It was perfect until my fourth year in 2014. I started to question my path, which, you know what? Funny thing, Alicia, I want to share with you. I just recently found a quote, which is incredible, um, that you learn some things by answering questions. That's how you learn. But then you discover new things by questioning answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that. I literally just recently heard that. And that was so true for me as I started to question those answers that I had of this is the career path that I want to choose and this is the right path for me. It was very much a cookie cutter way of like going forward in my life, especially career wise. But I started working at a community pharmacy and I saw the same people coming back again and again and again, month after month for the same health issue. And as I was dispensing the medications, working as a pharmacy tech, just as an internship, I saw over months like this is not working. We're not helping. Like we were mitigating symptoms of people's illnesses and their diseases and what they were dealing with, but not actually helping them solve the underlying cause. It seemed like we were just like putting a band-aid over the real issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was months at a time, but finally, after several months, I acknowledged to myself that I felt like I had lost my purpose. Like I did not want to continue in that career path. So long story short, after another several months of questioning if I should stay or go, ended up leaving. And literally 2 days after I graduated with my 4 year degree, not going on to get my doctorate, I met my mentor, who is still my mentor now, but I've had other mentors alongside her. But 2 days after my final exam is when I found her. And it's the age old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that
Yes.
was true for me. And that catapulted me on this path of personal development and ultimately getting into the industry and making it a business from my own.
Oh, I get all the goosebumps when you talk. So everyone knows, like, because that's the psychic part of like when you talk about like you met your mentor 2 days later, like I get all that because it lets me know like, oh,
Mm,
those are the matches, those are the energetic things that come together
yes.
that the universe does. Um, and whether or not you believe in the saying of there are no coincidences, but that's definitely um, and I'm sure you find this too. So one of the things that as humans, right, we struggle with is making that choice.
Mm,
And because we want to see all the steps.
right.
And we know that if we're shown all the steps, we're not going to do it. Because usually, like, if you got like 5 steps, three is usually kind of not the best, right? Like, that's the dark night of the soul. Like, that's the part where it's like you really got to go deep. So nobody, will. if you see them all, you're like, I don't want to do step 3 though. So when we get them like one at a time, but as
Mm,
humans, we don't really like that because we like to be prepared, particularly if you had
right.
any trauma in your life. So I love for you that like even though you were going through, you were having those months of something doesn't feel right. Like I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to choose something anyway.
Mm,
Like that's massive because there's so many people that don't do that.
right.
And um I know that's one of the things that I love to be able to support people in. And I would think as a transformational life coach, like that is like the place that you really get to show up and support people.
Definitely. I've walked a lot of people through transitions. More so not even walked them through it, but walked alongside them through it,
Mhm.
right? Like there's a couple of my clients that it was like the day we begin or a week after we begin coaching, they get a divorce.
Yeah.
Like or it's like mid divorce, like they sign up for coaching with me. I'm like, wow, like what a time. In fact, one of my clients I worked with this morning, she was like 3 years ago when we first started coaching together, and she had that transformation of going through that divorce. But
Mhm.
the biggest thing was like just that example, like her actually feeling empowered as she was going through that, even though it wasn't her choice. Like at least that particular client like found that her partner had been cheating on her.
Right.
So like that like shock, but then like literally just a month later for her to have that feeling of I think this is actually what's meant to be happening. Like,
Yeah.
that's not normal. In fact,
No.
her friends were questioning, like, "Are you okay?" And she's like,
Right.
"No,
Like,
I've never been better, actually. Like, this is great. It's actually meant to be." Like, that kind of thing.
yeah. Oh, that's I get so emotional when I think of those things because it's true. Like there you could have sort of your whole life dismantling, but this it's that knowing inside, right? Like we're going to talk about today, like the soul's purpose, where you're like,
Mm,
this can all, I don't know what all of this is, but I finally know that something here is important enough for me to
yes.
choose. We don't have the answers at that moment and we all go through it, but this is that driving force.
Mhm.
And so it's funny you talk about the relationship piece. Yeah, because that's um one of the things I always talk about is like if you have anything in your life that's not a match for you, it affects your whole life.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to create a business, but your marriage is really, you're with someone that's not a match, like it's really, really hard to combat that energetic differential.
Right.
And so something has to give way that's no longer a match. And relationships are one of them. I mean, I know when I got my divorce, when I started, my whole life burned to the ground and I was so excited for what was happening. And I remember people telling me, going, well, most relationships don't make it through this. And I used to think, oh no, but mine will. Because I'm like my determination is one of my superpowers, but no. And we're both so much happier, like there isn't, but it's one of those things like we hold on to even though we know.
Mhm.
And so yes, relationships, and I love that you're there to be able to support them through that because
Mhm.
like you said, their friends are like, are you okay? They come up against not even so much resistance, but just people going, I don't even know what's happening with you. So they don't know how to
Right.
support them. So the feeling of being alone can be really significant.
Definitely.
And so you're there to help them with that.
Yes.
So that's at a minimum of all, beside all the other magical things that you do, like that alone changes things for people. So um,
100%.
you being able to do that. So when we talk about soul's purpose, what does soul's purpose mean to you?
It means our reason for being here on planet Earth at this time in human history, that we have something to do that would benefit or help. In essence, it's so simple yet broad.
Yeah.
Like I mean, thankfully it's simple enough, but because living it is a whole nother challenge. But knowing it is simply that there's and it's not one particular reason. I would say, like when I say there's a reason you're here on planet Earth at this time in human history, for something, there's a whole range. It's not even just like your work in the world. It's like showing up, giving love to people in your relationships, things like that. But ultimately, it's for our evolution as a species, and
Mhm.
that technically the evolution of life everywhere, of this expansion. In our human experience, it's our consciousness,
Yeah.
like expanding in consciousness, which then cascades and expands in the different physical aspects of our life. But ultimately, it's an expansion that we're living into, and that's why we're here. That's our soul's purpose, is to grow.
Just makes me so happy. It does. Um, so for you, looking back at sort of your, where you were like, I'm graduating with this, this doesn't feel like a complete match anymore. If you had to pick like one or two things during that period of time that were pivotal for you, because I think a lot of people, even though they feel specific to us and the demonstration, some of the actions may be different or whatever, but
Mm,
a lot of that stuff is still the same core thing. So
yep.
I would love for people to, um, I think a lot of people could relate to that. So were there one or two
Yeah.
things in there where you're like, this is it?
And you're asking, this is it, isn't like something that helped me through that transition?
Yeah, or
What you're
even like
saying?
one of your biggest challenges, like some of,
Mm,
because everybody talks about like where they, we knew I didn't want to do this anymore. And everyone talks
right.
about like, oh, it's all unicorns and sparkles afterwards. Right. And a lot of people um don't always talk about the in between because
Mm,
there's so many people walking around there, whether it's spiritual or manifesting it, and they think it's just supposed to be super easy and it's just supposed to be always comfortable. And a lot of
right.
times it's not. Like these transformations, you're breaking down sort of the old you to become who
Yep.
you really are. And
Yeah.
so, and if there wasn't those things for you, that's fabulous. But was there one or two sort of pivotal moments where you were like, this has to change, or this is a sign, or um you have the epiphany of like, this is my soul's purpose.
Right. Well, it's interesting. In our human journey, the a major way that we learn is by getting things wrong,
Mhm.
not getting it right. And in fact, you mentioned before that usually it's not all unicorns and sparkles, your words. I've heard,
Yeah.
the common sunshine and rainbows. It's
Yeah.
not. By definition, it actually can't be. Because otherwise, like you said, like the old has to break down, and breaking down is not an easy process. It's not a glamorous process. It's quite in the dirt. Like even
Mhm.
like I think of the development of a diamond, for example. Like
Mhm.
it's through intense pressure, and it comes from coal, like of all things. It's
Right.
not it's not very
Nothing
shiny at
sparkly
all.
to start with at all. Yeah.
Literally nothing. So for me, it was a very clear indication of not it. I actually didn't have this is like a different thing, like this feels right for me,
Mhm.
of like a soul's purpose at that time. I just knew that there was something more, and I think that's a great place to start out because it taps into a very human experience that is intimately connected with our spirituality and our why we're here on planet Earth and in this human experience as this soul. We chose to be here. Um, that if you get a feeling, that's the inkling to look for. It's a very human thing to have those feelings, but if that feeling is like a nudge to interesting, like I'm feeling guided to this, like there's some draw or pull, like you can't explain it, but there's just this feeling, this knowing, as people say. I'm speaking to the choir here. I know that for you,
Oh
Alicia.
no, but the list,
Um,
like, I want
yeah,
so much of the world to hear this. So I'm just
yes.
gonna sit here and nod my head.
Right, exactly. But it really is a signal from our soul. My mentor would put it this way. It's so down to earth, grounded, easy to understand, simple. I wish I had these words before I made my decision to leave pharmacy and then go on this path. But it was 2 days later that I met my mentor, as I mentioned, and then learned these kinds of terms. She calls it longing and discontent.
Ooh,
Both of those two are
yes.
literally signals from our soul of where we're either feeling constricted so
Mhm.
that we can transform that energy of constriction to lean into expansion, which is what we're here for. As I mentioned, that's what our soul is calling for. It's what life wants itself. Literally, it's not even just as us as a soul, but it's literally through all aspects of life. Like a blade of grass will literally press through cement to
Right?
seek greater light. So that is it, that impulse is within all things. So it's very spiritual when you acknowledge those longings and those discontents. So longings obviously is like something you want more of, but discontents is actually what we were just honing in on. Most people are much more clear on what discontent they have in their life. Of this sucks. I don't like this. This is not okay. Not for me. And we often shun that, or we've been trained to just let it go. And we would say to ourselves, "Oh, I should just be grateful for what I have." Like,
Oh.
oh, I should just be
Oh.
grateful for being in a good career path, and I had a shiny six-figure salary just a few years away from me, but there was that discontent. Like I felt like my soul was being crushed, my heart was being crushed being in that industry after I started to really realize what was going on as a as a totality, like I still agree with modern medication. Like it's had
Yeah.
great advances and helps people. However, for the most part, a major part of that whole industry is treating symptoms. So it's not as good as a total direction that's heading. So I didn't want to be a part of it. So I just knew it was a not it. So that was the major thing of me identifying that. So challenge for sure. Like I actually dipped in and out of depression.
Mhm.
I probably should have went to therapy honestly back then. Thankfully I'm in therapy now. But but still like dealing with that depression and anxiety, and it was very difficult, especially because my friends, my parents, my brothers, like they were all saying, nope, just stay in school. You don't know what you're
Mhm.
doing. Like, just get through it. And those messages were just like bouncing off of me. Like that doesn't resonate at all.
Yeah. Oh, so I want to pause for a second, and I really want to I'm a feeler, so this is like I really want to acknowledge and honor you in those moments, because when you said I don't know anything except I know this isn't it, like I can feel that resonate across the globe, because
Mm,
there are so many people out there who they struggle because they don't have all the answers, kind of like what we talked.
yes.
But if they can just go, oh, not it is enough. Not it is enough to choose something different, to just keep moving forward. Like, there is so much power in what you just said there
Mm,
that I think can really allow people to know they're not alone in it and go, I don't have to have it all, but this is true. I'm not the only
yes,
one who goes, not it.
exactly.
So, yeah, I just really that was super powerful. And
Mm.
so thank you for that. And I just so many people, like I can't wait to like I'll be like, did you hear the not it part? Like, did you see? Like, do you
Yeah,
not feel how powerful that is? We don't have
right.
to have all the answers. You just got to know, not it. This
Yes,
is not it. And I'll figure out
exactly.
the rest, or the rest will
Mm,
be brought to me, not figure out. But so that's huge.
hmm.
That's and then like you said, because one of the questions I had for you, because I didn't know about, family support, and I wasn't gonna ask you that kind of question live. You know what I mean? Like that's not always that's a private question if you
Sure.
bring it up, but is there with your clients, how what are some of the ways you navigate people that don't have any
Mm,
support in there, whether it's family or it's cultural,
yeah.
because a lot of my clients are different cultures, and it's one of those things that I have to ask. I'll be like, okay, where are we at this? I was like, is this a culture thing, or is
Mm,
and they'll be like, yes, this is and this isn't,
right.
um, because a lot of times they're usually the only one in that family or in their circle of friends that are choosing something different.
Yes.
And so, what are some of the ways that you're able to support people and guide them through as a transformational life coach?
Right. Well, I mean, then someone working with me, if they're my client already, I emphasize and remind them that literally I am their support at this time.
Yeah.
Because I can remember one client in particular, young guy, it was 19 or so, had
Mm,
a very difficult and it sounded like abusive household that he was living in, still living with his parents, had some siblings, but like he did not get along with anyone that he was living with, and he had part of his dream was to move out so that he wasn't in that toxic environment. His words, like he literally called it toxic. But I kept encouraging him and reminding him that the calls that we had, which I mean, he had to even like leave his home and
yeah.
go on a walk, even sometimes in like the cold weather. It was like end of spring or end of winter into spring that we started. So like some of those times were very difficult for him to just get out and like make the coaching call, which I really appreciated his effort. Um, but still just reminding him that I'm there for him. That's enough at the time.
Yeah.
But the other thing I always encourage is to keep a corner of your mind open to a possibility of meeting someone new. Because here's the thing. If we have a certain belief, that assumption or perception on ourselves or life, then we are going to live out that belief
Hmm.
no matter what. There's a great quote from a psychologist named Maxwell Maltz. He was originally a plastic surgeon in the 40s and 50s in New York City, turned to more psychology because he started to realize after a decade of experience that he could fix someone's nose, especially back then. It was more so like actual like deformities that he would fix and support people, like say like with their face.
Hmm.
He would fix them, and then 10 to 20% of his clients would come back and say, I don't feel any better.
Yeah.
And so he's like, he got like interested in that and then started going down the psychology route. And now he's written many books. I mean, he's passed on now, but written books on self-image psychology and the power of that. And that the way we view ourselves, in essence, is how we live our life. So we can't outperform our own self-image,
Mhm.
but we can change our self-image, thankfully. So, getting back to my point, my encouragement to any of my clients is to notice yourself and how you are viewing yourself or within your, sphere of circle of friends or family or people in your life and start to really question, is this belief about me being only connected with people that don't support me, is that actually serving my life or not? Because if we stay with that belief and say like, oh, like stay in the victim mentality, like, oh, my family doesn't support me, I don't have any friends, they don't get me, then it's like we set up a barrier to those connections that are probably within our reach, literally like in our phone contacts or people that we connect with on social media or even literally in our community. Like one other tangible suggestion I offer aside from that inner work and changing the inner dialogue and the inner belief, in essence, to open up to believing that you can connect with people that are supportive and would resonate with you. But the other side of it, a technical thing, go to meetup.com.
I say that all the time.
I
Like
love
I'm on Meetup.
meetup.com.
Like, yes,
I've
it's
I actually met one of my best friends here in Colorado. His name is Alex McFarland. He was part of like a networking event that I went to. It was more so for business for me, but I was looking for people who were spiritual. And
Mhm.
he ended up like having a love for Zen and Buddhism, and in conjoining that with his finances. And like I've had
Ooh.
him on my podcast before. I've been on his like at his events. Like we've collaborated. I've stayed friends with him for now over 5 years. Like I've had again, he's one of my closest friends. He came to my wedding. Like and I met him through meetup.com. So
Yep.
that's a great website to connect with people who are like-minded.
It is. I've met I have friends still to this day that I have met through meetups there. I have friends in other countries that I have met through there. And
Nice.
especially as an introvert, like it's one of the things that helps you get out of the house.
Mm,
You know what I mean? If you're in it, like I'm in Phoenix here and I have my friends, but I mean, I'm even going to a new one, I think like Friday. 'Cause I
nice.
was like, "You know what? My circle has changed." And I do some stuff with, like, some Facebook groups, but I was like, "You know what? I'm getting back to Meetup." Like, there are some things that I wanna go do,
Mm,
and I don't know anybody there, but I'm gonna go and I'm gonna meet people, and so, yes, I say meetup.com all the time also, so I'm thrilled that, and here's the thing, like, you can find anything on there,
yeah.
like, anything. It's insane.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's the reason I suggest it too, because you can find anything like that and
yeah.
search it. Like
Yeah.
literally, I suggest my clients to search like what interests are you looking for to connect with people on? And
Yep.
usually it's something like spirituality and personal growth, things like that. So like I recommend typing that in and then see what's around you. You can
Yep.
literally find something that's like 5, 10 minutes away.
Yeah. Well, and even now after, COVID, everyone is so Zoom educated that so much of it is done virtually also.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like if you want to join a group that happens to be in a different state, you still get to connect with those people
Mm,
without, being limited to your geographical location. So
exactly.
um that's so funny. I was like, "Yay." It's true. Cuz we talk about this all the time that we live in an age where connection is the possibility of connection is everywhere. Yet everybody is feeling so isolated and so lonely to an
Right.
epidemic state.
Hmm.
And so, Meetup is one of those ways that it actually, um, it requires the inspired action step of like, right, you've got to, it's not like just sitting and scrolling on your phone. You've either got to go virtually or in person to go do this sort of thing. And even if to the introverts out there, even if you don't talk to anybody, you went and you got out and you chose some self-care, responsible for your happiness. Like
Yes.
that action, that alone, that choice, right? We choose and then things show up. We choose and then things show up. So, um, I love that you're teaching them that as well.
Hmm.
That because you're right. When we have these beliefs, it's all we don't even know that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're holding on to that filter or that belief and when everyone around you is telling you it's not possible, this is you,
Mm,
it can be really, really challenging. So I love the
100%.
balance of the internal work as well as the external.
Yes. Yeah, both are necessary. I like to say too that I mean, even given the topic of like our soul's purpose, right? It's why we're here as a soul. However, we're here in human experience for a reason.
Yeah.
There's something for us to do, some people for us to talk to, some experience for us to have. Like source, spirit, God, the infinite, whatever label you'd like to choose, is literally manifesting through us in this
Mhm.
experience. So we're here as humans for a reason. Like we're not meant to just throw out this human experience just because, oh, I need to be more spiritual. Like it's nothing about that.
No.
It's a combination of both.
Correct. Oh, yes. Thank you for saying that. I love because there's some people who are like, oh, and it's like, no, 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 that's not, that's the top. Then we get into what spiritual actually is. And
Mm,
because, whether it's whatever your label is, spirituality is, it goes along with personal development, but there are people that do personal development without a spiritual aspect to it at all. Like that's
yep.
not my world, but um, it's, it's very deep work. It's
Hmm.
very, um, life-changing work, and it's not do you cut when you and I know you don't attract clients like this because it's not the kind of work that we do, but when you're out at a meetup or you happen to be
Mm,
chatting with someone, we live in a culture that's so much of like the quick fix or the pill
yeah.
or so um what are sort of some of the ways when you meet people like that where you're like, look, it's because people, even when you do your strategy calls, right? There are some people who are like, well, I just want this now and this fixed. And we're like, so let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Doesn't
I
exactly look like that.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I've worked with clients from all different age ranges, but I
Mhm,
find that that's a very common thing in a younger demographic. I've had many clients from ages 18, like my youngest client was actually like 16 or 17, just was one time, but usually it's like 19, 20 to like their mid to late 20s. But
mhm.
I've worked with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, heck, even like 60s. But generally at the younger demographic, that's like, I think it's just like baked in the cake of people's programming or paradigm now, given how accessible so many things are in technology and like instant gratification. So like even myself, like I'm speaking to the choir here for myself, like I'm 31, so I'm a millennial. So like even just engaging with Instagram like once a day for like half an hour or so, like is in a way like a programming of, oh, there's a quick, easy
Yeah,
answer. It's like just refresh the screen, I get more content. So I think it's just normal to have in our day and age. However, funny enough, I actually don't have conversations with people on that.
yeah,
Uh, I let them discover that on their own. Because I find that if you try to tell someone, oh, that you've got instant gratification and that's a problem,
yeah.
or it's not good, then there's more resistance. And sometimes someone's not even ready for that answer. I actually generally tend to work with maybe you say like on a strategy call, like you said,
Yeah.
that'll be present, but I'm not there to address that. Like I'm only there to explore to see if I'm a good fit for someone. And if not, I let them know. Like I will
Yeah.
literally, I've had many sessions where I say, I think would be good for you is this book
Yeah.
or this YouTube channel that I think you really would resonate. Like obviously, like, oh, you can continue listening to my podcast, whatever. But only when I find that someone's a good fit and actually has that awareness already of,
Mhm.
I get it, that transformation takes time. It's not a snap of a fingers or something in a day or even in a week. Because the science shows that it takes about 66 days to change a habit. That's the average. It takes most people are aware of that it's 21 days to form a
Right.
habit. That's just the beginning. That because that's
Oh,
like
right, a sustainable habit.
yeah, that's the lower end. It's like the beginning, and it depends on the habit because
Mhm.
the scientific research that has been done and like the studies that have been done on different types of habits. Like for example, one of them would be like drinking an extra glass of water every day. Super easy. You can get that into a pattern within 3 weeks.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to something very different, like say like developing an exercise habit when you're not a person who exercises every day, that's something that would take more of like a 66-day average to
Mhm.
where it becomes your normal and that you just naturally think that way. You don't have to cause yourself to do it or put it in your calendar and like lay out your clothes in order to motivate yourself. Like it's nothing of that. Like 66 days is the average. So it does take time.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd always heard the shorter one, so I love that you're bringing up, like, that for our quote unquote, like, bigger habits, right?
Mhm.
Um, it takes more time.
Yes.
And and that's the part too, like we talk about the human experience, right? Like this is as much as we want the quick fix, it's like you learn so much along those 66 days.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many wins along the way too. Like it's I remember reading a study when I was young, um, and it said, are you the type of person that feels completed along the way and accomplished
Mm.
along the way, or are you one who feels accomplished and completed at the end. I am very much the second, like when it's all done. And that's
Yeah.
not how life is. Like that's
Right.
always when it's like, nope, I get to just see all the wins along the way because the truth is like the final finish line is when we get to leave. And
Mm,
so but when your personality or your societal background is like, oh, when you finish something, right, then that's when you get the praise or the love or the win. Like that's the carrot we're chasing after. We're not always taught that there's carrots all along the way.
mm. That's a good way of
And
putting it. I like that.
yeah, it's
Going
it's a
along with that
practice for
analogy.
me.
Yeah, I think it's a normal practice for any human because you're right. Like, actually, I'd be curious to know, like, if there are people who have answered the opposite for that survey that you took,
Mhm.
if that was a developed trait, though, because I
Ooh,
personally don't know anyone who
ooh.
just naturally loves the process.
That's
Like,
true.
at
Because
least in
this
my
was
experience, the
yeah.
people I've known or and for myself at different times, like I'm not perfect at this, but like that someone who would say I love the process of
Mhm.
growing, like I feel like that's something to develop. I haven't talked with someone who has that as like an ingrained, like, oh, I've just
Right.
been born this way.
That's true. That's true. Ooh, see, now my science brain is all clicking and like, "Ooh, I wonder," because I
I
read
wonder.
this that, like, 30 years ago.
Oh wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was because 'cause I'm 50.
Sure.
So, um, and it's funny because because this is what we do. It's one of the things I've used to judge myself. Like, "Oh, if I was only,"
Mm,
because it
right.
gives you, like, it makes it look like you said, like, there's a whole other group of people that are automatically made this way. And because you're not enjoying the journey and you're choosing a long project, right?
Right.
Your win is so far off. So
Yeah.
your unhappiness is a longer period of time. And it really sets you up of like, oh, if I was only like them, then
Hmm.
my life would be different.
Right.
And you're right. Like it's true. I have never met anyone who just ingrainedly, like you said, was like, oh no, this is the best. It's a learned skill.
Yes.
And even then you have to remind yourself sometimes when you're in
Literally.
it, like, "Oh, no, this is the journey. That's right. This is the journey that I signed up for. This is fabulous. It's all fine. Like, it's gonna be
Exactly.
okay."
Yeah.
Um,
I literally just had a thought that I could see it being ingrained in someone, but only if they had a phenomenal upbringing I can
right.
think of. Like say like parents or caregivers, siblings, teachers, like constantly cultivating that in a child,
Yeah,
and having that be their like normal way of living is like celebrating the moments and the progress versus the end result. But I don't know. Again, a part of me thinks like it is just a normal human trait that we look for the end result. Like
yeah,
I'm not sure though. I think that's up for debate.
yeah. No, I love it though. Well, because when you started speaking, the one thing that you said that, I was like, "Oh, I wish, uh, our society was," and it kinda ties into this. It's because you said we learn more by doing things wrong. That our
Yes.
world is set up on doing things right.
Yeah.
We don't get, praise when we do something wrong. We don't get, support, right? We get discipline, we get
Mm,
judgment, those kind of things. And so but the truth is that's you're right. That's the opposite of the human experience of how we grow our consciousness as a, species is like, no, we
exactly.
learn this kind of stuff, but our whole society is set up the opposite.
Right.
And, so I think it kinda ties into this of, like, the things along the way. It's like, oh, getting it right means getting it all perfect at the end,
Mm,
not the up and down and the left and the right of the journey along the way, whereas that learned trait of, like, "No, these are wins, even though I went left and I gotta get back in alignment," or whatever, like, that's still a win because guess what? Like, the recognizing, like, "Oh, this isn't it," like, right?
yes.
Not it. So I'm gonna come
Exactly.
back over here and choose like, that's a win in of itself.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think of my prime example of this anytime this topic comes up, I always share is all of us, if we have had the privilege, because this is uh, the perspective that is not ableist, I will say, like being aware that everyone has different abilities with their bodies. But if we had the privilege of learning to walk,
Mhm.
we had to fall down in
Yeah.
order to walk. Like there's no way around it. There's no way about not falling down. You had to in order to actually learn like how to use your muscles and the feelings of that and like how to take those steps and join them together. Like, yeah, we fell down dozens of times. So like it's such a normal thing, but yet we try to live our life differently and like be this like proper, like, oh yeah, I got it all together. No one does.
No. And if anyone is telling you that, it's not true.
Yes.
Because, there in any sort of uh business or industry, you know what I mean? There are people who sort of will be out of integrity and that sort of thing. And it's like, so and in anything, if people are telling you, I have it all together, please listen to your own intuition. Like, I'm
Mm.
not talking to the world now. Like Kevin's like, yeah, I know.
The
I'm like that.
listener. Oh, I
I know
got
I'm
it.
looking at
I
you,
run a
but I'm
podcast
talking to
too.
them. Like, please listen to your inside. So, and particularly in the spiritual world, like I see it a lot that
Mm.
people just because someone calls themselves spiritual or religious, they hand over any questioning, any sense of themselves. They just go, this, I must listen to everything here because of these beliefs, right? Like you said, we're
Mm.
believe like this person spiritual, this person's a channel, this person's a priest, like whatever. It's like we just hand over our entire life to them without
Right.
question.
Mm.
And I always invite people to please question. Please, please,
Agreed.
please. Question me,
Yeah.
question whoever. Like I please.
Yes. That's where discoveries are made. Again, the
Yes.
quote,
Right?
discoveries are made from questioning answers.
Yes.
Question it.
And it's very much like that's one of the skills that I've learned is to live in the question, like very much of like,
Mm.
even when, and not perfect, so trust me, it's not every time. When something doesn't go the way I want it to, I'm like, okay, what's right about this I'm not getting?
Mm.
What is here? What are the benefits of this? Like, what is here, because it shifts the energy of it. Do you still have the
Definitely.
human emotions and that sort of thing? Yeah, it's very much the ebb and flow in that moment. And it brings you out of the hole or the rabbit hole for
Mm.
a second and be like, okay, so what else is here? Like, we validate our human emotions and what's right about this? And you get an answer and then you ask the question again. And because we get our conclusions and then that's the box.
Mm.
And so I would think that um, do you find in the work that you do, like that a big part of what you do is like sort of breaking people out of those boxes, whether they've put themselves in it or they put society, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not even just one box, right? It's
Yeah.
like whether it's the whole Russian doll thing or they're put, we put in a box, we get out of that one, then we put ourselves in the next box. And as the journey goes.
Every day. And here's why. We're always in a box.
Yeah.
As long as we're human, I'll say, as long as we're in this human experience, we have a box that we're living in. And it just depends on, are we enjoying this box that we're in currently, or do we want a bigger box, a different box,
Yeah.
slightly more lit up box, whatever we want. But let me define what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that, we're always going to be in a box, like a confined
Right.
space or like,
Yeah.
but what I am defining here with being in the box is a typical term we'll use for when we are living in a certain pattern, a certain structured way of thought, emotion, action, behavior, way of life. As humans, we cannot get around that. It's what we were just talking about before. That's
Yeah.
why we are in here in this human experience,
Yeah.
to grow as a soul through human experiences. And we chose to be here. So in our human experience, we have this human equipment, I call it. It's our brain, our body, which includes our nervous system, as well as our subconscious mind and our conscious mind. All of that is programmable. We all have programs. Some of that programming is limiting, and some of that programming is expansive. A lot of people have way more limiting programming than expansive programming, but
Right.
it's still programming. But one example of this programming, like I find that a lot of people, when they use the term like, oh, this programming or a pattern or a paradigm or belief, often they think of it as like, oh, this is limiting. But it's just, or that it's bad, they'll say.
Right.
It's not good or bad. It's actually just, is it serving you and your dream and what you want to create, or is it not? And like, is it serving your life? I think I lost my train of thought of where I was going with that. But oh, yes, an example of a paradigm or a structured way of thinking. It's a very healthy one. It's expansive.
Mhm.
Brushing our teeth twice a day.
Right.
That's a very solid piece of programming that we got, most of us, from when we were younger.
Yeah.
Brush your teeth twice a day. That felt very confining, like a box that we were in when we were kids. But now, as adults, especially with those dental bills, if we don't take care of our teeth, we know it's like, I want to be in that box of to brushing my teeth
Right.
twice a day. So like, it's not about good or bad. It's just what kind of experience do we want in this life?
Yeah.
And that's just an analogy too. I'll say, like, it's nothing to, especially if you're, as you're living more in more expansive states, expansive paradigms or those boxes, like life can be such a dream, so magical
Mhm.
and so synchronistic, like literally miracles happen in your life. So like that's within everything I just shared, that
Right.
miracles do happen through programming that you develop and create and reprogram so that you live your life in a more expansive way.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Just such good stuff. Um, yeah, because that was one of the questions I had also where it was like, um, and there may be more, but I think you answered a
Sure.
lot of it. I was like, well, uh, but it feels like there's another little thing over here. Like,
Ask away.
I know, the insight of, because so many people think when they start their personal development journey or spiritual, whatever their awakening, sort of as I call it, right? Like they wake up and they go, this isn't what I want, but I'm going to
Yep.
start something.
Yep.
And there's so many times where they think if they get the one thing, right, then it's done. Kind of like what we've talked about, right? Of like, you've achieved the goal. And it's like, so what is, I have the word insight here, but you insert whatever verb you want,
Sure.
of like how to or educate, support people to understand like you've now just begun. Like
Mm.
this is what it looks like from now on. And
Hmm.
you're going to move from box container and on.
Yeah.
Um and that, don't know, where was I going with it? Because like I said, you answered so, but there's a piece right here that I want to, just hasn't come all the way in yet. This is what it's like when you're with a psychic.
Let me see if I'm hearing you correctly in terms of what you're looking for. Is
Yeah.
is your question about any insight or maybe like way I can provide of like how to help someone really settle into knowing that it is the lifelong journey? Is that really
Yes,
your
that's the word
question?
I was looking for, settling in, and not
Yeah. Yeah.
settling in, right? Like you
Yeah.
feel that of like, yes, this is, you're on the horse now, and now you're gonna just go around the world. So
Yes, exactly. So my encouragement, first and foremost, it's at this could be an entirely other conversation, like a full hour.
yeah.
But I would encourage exploring an idea of surrendering
Mhm.
and letting go in order to be supported by life, by God, by spirit.
Yeah.
There's a great, literally the piece of work that I'm thinking of as like a whole total like way of living that I've studied. I've listened to this audiobook at least 3 times now. Um, I'm pretty sure it's literally just called The Art of Letting Go by
Mm.
Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr. And he's a Franciscan monk that is just a brilliant teacher. And I believe he has a book on the topic, but I love the audiobook because it's more of his free flowing telling of stories versus like just reading the actual script. But anyway, the basic idea being that when we do let go of our own preconceived notions or how we should be or what we think we should be doing, when we actually surrender and open up to just what life is currently in this present moment, then grace follows.
Yeah.
That life itself rises up to support you. Like as much as like if you're in an ocean and you're trying to like paddle or like tread water to keep yourself afloat, but in particular parts of certain parts of our ocean, like for example, the Dead Sea, um, there's so much salt content that you literally could just let go and float.
Yeah.
You don't need to, expend your own personal energy. But I find that a lot of people find that they feel like they're doing that, especially in a personal growth path, that like, oh, I have to like keep going, keep going, keep going, like, put effort in. It could seem like, oh, like this is going to be a lifelong thing. Well, no, like it doesn't actually have to be that current way that you're perceiving your own growth. Maybe it's been that way up until now, but there's a much more graceful way of evolving and growing that doesn't involve so much push and energy that is forceful. So that's my encouragement is to seek out those kinds of messages and work on surrendering and letting go.
Yeah. No, I love that because it's one of those, like for me, one of my challenges that I had to work through was learning to be a human being and not a human doing.
Yeah.
And and that was really, really hard for a long time because I was such a doer and I was a people pleaser and all of those kind of things that go along with that of how you earn love, approval, your place in this world, right, is by doing and doing and doing. So when you stop doing, one, because
Mm.
for me, my body was like, I'm going to take you out because you're not
Sure.
listening. So it was very much a dramatic turn for me. But um, your body can't sustain it either. Our human bodies can only, is particularly our nervous system, can
Mm,
only sustain so much. And so you're right, when you are able to allow, and like you said, whatever label you use for it, God, source, universe, to come in and do its job, right? Like we're co-creators with this,
mm,
and being able to go, "Oh, okay, I don't have to grip the steering wheel so tight." And it comes into that trust factor, right? Which is huge for a lot of people, particularly if you've had any trauma in your lifetime. And I know for me, I have this, they hang above my desk here, is I have a set of plastic toddler car keys.
mm.
And so when I get the sense of like, I need to get in there and start driving my life and be in control, I look at those because those are human. Just like I will play with the toy car keys while the universe has the real car keys. So it
Nice.
gives my human something to do in a fun, laughing way
Oh,
of like, oh, look at me. Again, I'm just going to play with my plastic keys and I'm going to let it do its job.
mm.
Um, because it's it's this place of just those old programs kick in sometimes. And um, what would you say to people? Because a lot of times what I encounter with people also is, um, they'll work through so much and something will circle back, right? Like we'll peel it. And they're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I already did this. I have
Mm.
already healed this thing. Why is this
Yes.
back?
Yep. What would I say to someone like that? Like
Yeah,
what they're
like
dealing
what
with?
do you have? Like, I know
Yeah.
that's something myself, but also with my clients that I come
Yes.
up um through that where, so I want to hear your magical take on it as well.
Be happy to share that. You've heard, I know you've heard this piece of advice before, but I'll share a different perspective after. But the age old advice is just the like core of this, that you're a different person, you're in a different place than you are right now than you were last time you faced this seemingly same issue. It's not the
Ooh,
same
right.
because you're not the same. So, and literally, even if it was just yesterday, you're a different person today. Even if it was 5 minutes ago, you're a different person now. It may not seem that way because it's so, so subtle, our change, but that's an encouragement, first off. But how that's true, I invite you to see that the pattern of life is a spiral. We see that pattern of life of a spiral in our galaxy. It's
Mhm.
literally a spiral galaxy. Our DNA is a literal spiral. Spirals are literally within all nature. Literally, how plants grow is actually in spiraling. If you actually can see, there's videos on YouTube of like a time lapse of over like a month of say like a bud growing. It literally spins in a spiral pattern going upward. So we're in spirals, right? And then we also are all familiar with the ever so challenging downward spiral. So
Right.
so it's
I
spirals,
don't know
right?
what you're talking about, Kevin. That
Yeah.
never happens to me.
Right. So again, think of that shape. Now, if you take that shape in 3 dimensions, like that spiraling either up or down, if you take that shape and look from the top view of it, like you're at the top of that spiral, you look down, it looks like just a circle. So from that top-down approach, from a very limited perspective, it seems like you're coming around back to the same issue. It seems like you're in the same spot. But if you expand your perception and realize that you're in this growth process, and if you have been really working on yourself, even just to a degree, like you've been honestly wanting to change, if you've been doing nothing and then a problem comes back around, it's like you look in the mirror. Like you got to be honest with yourself. Like
Yeah.
that's a challenge. But if you have honestly been doing something to work on shifting some issue and it's come back around, you really can tell yourself the truth that you're not the same. You're facing this from a different point of view. And it could also be another analogy aside from that, 3-dimensional perception rather than 2D perception of the spiral. It's also look at it as if oh my god, I lost I'm with you here
The
being like so
spiral.
the spiral, right? But no, but the analogy that I was thinking of is another very tangible, hopefully it'll come back to me. The spiral one's the main one, but something sparked and then it went. So I'm gonna let that be.
Yeah. This is the surrender part. This is what it looks like.
Yes,
Even when
literally.
it's done live, right? Like this
Exactly.
is a place where, look, this is what happens. This is real life right now. We're like, oh, I had a really cool, yeah, that may come back. That may
And there
not.
it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I pause and say that because there's so many people I meet that struggle with visibility.
Mm,
And they're like, oh, if you're going to be visible in any, whether it's a business owner, they're like, it's like, you have to be perfect. And it's like, no, no,
Right.
you really don't. Like this is what it looks like. Oh, go, go.
Agreed. It came back to me. Thank
Okay.
you for holding that space. It's like an onion. That's
Mm,
the other very tangible analogy. It's
yeah.
like you peel back a layer of an onion, there's still more onion inside. But if you're working on shifting something as a challenge or an issue, like you might have to peel back several layers if
Yeah.
it's a deeply rooted pattern or programming.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. Well, and here's the challenge too. Like if you're someone who feels accomplished and completed when it's done, until the onion is which it's never gone.
Yeah.
So that's that practice of learning like, no, this is the wins along the way. Like just because it circles back doesn't
Mm,
mean you've done it wrong, you didn't heal it, whatever. Like I love everything that you've just said. I think that will really resonate with a lot of people of you're not the same person. And it makes me
mm.
think of uh there's I know you have at least one brother, but you said brothers.
Yes.
So
I have two
you
brothers,
have two
two older
brothers.
brothers.
Okay.
The co-host of my podcast
Yeah.
is my middle brother, Chris.
Okay. Um so like me and my brother, we're 4 years apart. He's 4 years older. And I've seen this in just friends and clients and just the world of like when you grow up in the same house, but you take very different paths. And
Mm,
you're like, how does that happen? We had the same parents. And then I had someone explained really not that long ago, like within probably the last 5 years of my life of like, yeah, but they had a different version of your parents. And I was like, "Oh, you're right." Like, when my brother was born, my parents were a certain version of themselves, and when I was born 4
mm.
years later, I got a different version of them.
Agreed.
And so as that goes along, it's like even though you grow up in the same house, you get different versions of your parents.
Yeah.
But nobody really talks about that and how that affects the family dynamic.
Mm,
So, that's just the whole spiral, and I was like, "Oh," because you're like when you said coming back, and I was like, "Yeah, that's sort of like when the second kid or the third kid comes along, they're getting a completely different,
right.
the parents have learned stuff since the first kid. So when the second baby's born, they're like, no, no, we know what to do with this. We don't got to bring all the stuff. We just need, one backpack.
Right.
So they get a different version.
Mm,
And sometimes the siblings can't, there can be a disconnect of like, well, but they're not like that. And the older one experienced them, like seriously, the oldest one gets parents trying to just figure out how to be parents. Like that's the
mm,
truth. And they're like, no, no, you don't even know. Like you don't know what it was like for us. So it's like you have completely different experiences, but growing up in the same house. But
mm.
nobody really talks about that dynamic. And so that's just what I saw when you talked about the spiral. And like you said, looking like you're in the same place, but when you expand it out, you're actually deeper in it.
Yes.
And it's my little offshoot of that.
I
But
love it. It makes it more tangible. Like
yeah.
that was a real world example of that very poignant truth.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good stuff. Oh my goodness. Um, well, and I also want to talk about, and you let me know like where we're going because now I'm like this and this and this. Your podcast, right? This
Yes.
amazing science and spirituality podcast. You all should know, like when I happened upon it, I was telling Kevin earlier, I was like, how did I not know this exists? Because those are my two worlds, like everybody who knows me knows. And so uh, I'd love to hear about that as well, if you're willing to share. If
Sure.
not, you'd be like, no, I'm not going to talk about that. Like, I want to talk about this other part.
No, I'd be
Your
happy to
choice.
share. My brother and I started that podcast in 2019, just about 8 months or 9 months before the whole COVID shutdown started.
Oh, wow.
So it was July of 2019 we started, but our podcast actually started to take off once COVID hit and people were staying home and people just had more time, I think, and also were looking for something on this topic of science and spirituality. And there's so many people who like went through a spiritual awakening
Yeah.
or in 2020. I've heard many stories of that. So it's been a guide, honestly, for many people. It's been listened to by people in over 113 countries now. We have over 1 million downloads, 230 episodes. Um, we have a subscriber program now, but ultimately, it really is just blending the two worlds of science and spirituality. But me and my brother started this podcast because him and I were having conversations about these topics anyway. And we
Mhm.
were like, why don't we just record this? It would be like a half an hour talking about this idea and this research and that, like how our lives have changed by this insight. Like, and so we were like, why don't we just record this? Like, just put it out there. And so it was the first year was like a slow building up of
Mhm.
our audience, but then it really did take off around COVID. And I think a big part of it is because people really resonate and enjoy our back and forth. Because my brother Chris is my best friend. He's the closest person to me in my life aside from my wife.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, he's a year and a half older than me. And so he's known me my entire life. I've known
Right.
him for 31 and a half years of his life. So yeah.
He has a different version of your parents.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking about him with that. But yeah, so it's been a journey, but we're continuing that going. New episodes every week.
I was when I was looking at it, I was just looking at it again the other day, and the country that you have the highest listeners in was Canada.
Yeah,
And I was like, that's so interesting. Cause I would have thought, I mean, yes, that's very close to the US, but it was like
sure.
30 or 50%, like it was a high percentage of the numbers. And
Right.
I was like, that's so interesting. It was just a little thing of interest to me where I was like, Canada, huh?
Yeah.
You know,
I have no idea how that happened because we're also this is a humbling statistic in a good way that like we were just feel very humble about this that we are the top 1% podcast
mhm.
most shared in the entire world.
Ooh,
Out of all podcasts, top 1%, most people like sharing our podcast episodes with their friends, their family, people they know. Again, I think that just comes back to like the dynamic that I have with my brother, and then of course our topics.
yeah. Well, congratulations. That's a big
Thank
deal.
you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
That's well,
Yeah,
because when you do this, there's all kinds of metrics, right? Like
right.
you're listing globally, you're listing numbers, but like that sharing part is just a whole other part of it. Like not only did they enjoy what you talked about, but they were like, someone else needs to listen to this."
Exactly.
That's a whole other kind of
Yeah.
gift.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gives me all the feelings. Yes. That's just and I thoroughly enjoy it. Like I said, I started listening. I was like, oh my God, this is the best. So
Thank you.
um so where can they find it? iTunes, Spotify, but like
Literally anywhere. We're
yeah.
not on YouTube, but we have started video podcasts on Spotify. So we've been uploading the video so that everyone can watch like while we interview or talk with each other. Sometimes there's like one or two solo episodes I do every year or so. Like for just me sharing a message.
Mhm,
But yeah, any podcasting platform like Spotify, Google, Apple, those are the main ones, but
mhm.
we're on others. Not that I can come that's coming to mind right now.
Right? Those are the big ones though. So,
Yes.
plus if you just Google science and spirituality podcast, it'll come up and
Yes.
they'll be able to find it, or on your phone if you go
Yes.
into the thing. Difference between Gen X and, and millennials. Sometimes we do stuff on the computer because it's bigger. We can see better.
Right.
So, um, and I know I can't believe that it's almost been an hour that's gone by already. So, is there um, any sort of uh, last words or something you want to leave someone with
Mm,
about their soul's purpose or anything else that you would like to share?
sure. Yeah, just an encouragement to act on what you do know internally, despite the challenges mentally, or even around you within the people in your life that are questioning that inner knowing. Because that inner knowing we often call as our intuition,
Mhm.
that again, I believe is our soul guiding us to where we're meant to be. Like the work that I get to do today, even the podcast that we just talked about, it would not be in existence if I did not listen to that voice and leave pharmacy school.
Right.
That was a very scary, difficult, uncertain decision. And I did not have a path for a good like 3 to 6 months. Like it was this like in between space. But I'm so grateful and proud of myself, that version of myself back then for listening, because it put me on this incredible adventure that I've been on now for a decade. And the most incredible things and magical things that happen in life are often from when you listen to that inner voice. So whatever it's telling you to do or to get away from or stop or to change, then consider taking action on that this week. Cause yeah, it's just life is waiting for you.
Right. Oh, what perfect. Yes. Life is waiting. So please also tell people how they can work with you, like how they can find you and all of the
Yes.
magical things that you offer.
You mentioned my website earlier. I think it was in this recording, but even if it wasn't, I forget. But
Yes, I will
but
have I will have his bio and all of the links and all that kind of stuff in the show notes and on all the
great.
social media posts and all. I have part of that there, but it will all be
Thank you.
reposted again. So
Yes.
for sure. And
Yeah. My website is the main place to go. It's kevincarton.com. I have a free like guidebook there you can download just to get started on getting clear on your soul's purpose. I call it the Soul Purpose Blueprint. I also have coaching programs that are listed on my website, and I also offer a 1 hour free call for anyone who's interested in coaching with me but wants to explore what that would be like. I call it a strategy session. So that is also the links for that are on the work with me or coaching programs page on my website.
Okay, perfect. And I will let everyone know, like because I wanted to see everything that you had. So I even downloaded the Soul's Purpose Blueprint because I was like, what is like how does he walk people through it? And in case there was anything that sparked questions I wanted
Mm,
to ask here. So please visit Kevin's website and at a minimum get this blueprint because it actually I loved it's very well put together.
thank
It
you.
walks you through the questions are amazing. And I at a minimum that like you've created something that can change people's life in just those few pages.
Mm, I
So
appreciate that.
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, this is," like I said, regardless of what they choose, you've created something that they can walk away with that is going to change their lives if they
Mm,
choose it. So,
right.
it was really, really a great job. And I wanted to say a massive thank you for joining me today. This has been such a pleasure. I'm so happy that I was able to connect with you and follow, I followed my intuition and I was able to meet you and we were able to do this today. And I am so, 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 so grateful.
Me too. Thank you for having me. Appreciate
You
you.
are most welcome. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.